Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tim Huxley, Executive Director of the Asia Office of the International Institute for Strategic Studies here in Singapore. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you to the 26th IISS Fullerton Lecture, which will be delivered shortly by the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, QC, Secretary-General of the Commonwealth of Nations. This morning I'd particularly like to welcome our friends from the Royal Commonwealth Society and others in the audience who haven't come to a IISS Fullerton Lecture previously. For those of you who are watching the webcast of this Fullerton Lecture, I should say that we're holding this event in the Straits Room of the grand and historic Fullerton Hotel in the heart of Singapore's financial district. As many of our guests this afternoon already know, the spirit and purpose of this distinguished lecture series is to inspire informed and intelligent debate on matters of international importance from an international perspective. The first Fullerton Lecture was delivered in March 2012 by UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. We're honoured this morning to have with us as our Fullerton Lecturer Patricia Scotland, Baroness Scotland, who became the 6th Secretary-General of the Commonwealth in April this year. Baroness Scotland has had a distinguished and dynamic career in law, public service and politics in the United Kingdom. A lawyer by profession, she was the first black woman and the youngest woman ever to be appointed Queen's Counsel. She was the first black woman to be appointed Deputy High Court Judge, Recorder, Master of Middle Temple, and the only woman so far to be Attorney General for England and Wales. As a British government minister, Patricia Scotland implemented major reform of the criminal justice system. In 2011, she returned to private practice at the bar and continued to share her expertise on constitutional, civil, and criminal justice reform, human rights, public and family law, gender equality, diversity, and corporate social responsibility. Today, Baroness Scotland is going to speak about the value of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is an important but unusual intergovernmental organisation. Sometimes it's been dismissed as an anachronistic club for countries that were former British dominions, colonies and protectorates. But it's not only survived, it's prospered, and it's become attractive even to countries that were never or were only partially under British control. Rwanda, Mozambique, and Cameroon. It brings together countries which are rich and poor. It's not a security alliance. It's not really an economic bloc, but its cohesion is underwritten by the important principles of adherence to democracy, rule of law, and respect for human rights. We're delighted that its Secretary-General is with us today to explain what the Commonwealth is, what it does, and why it remains important.
Well, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, Commonwealth friends, it really is a distinct pleasure to see so many of you here and to be able to spend just a little time sharing with you some of the thoughts on the value of the Commonwealth. And I really want to thank Dr. Anthony Yee, who is the Chairman of the Board of Governors and Trustees of the Royal Commonwealth Society of Singapore, and Dr. Tim Huxley, the Executive Director of the International Institute of Strategic Studies here in Asia. And can I say that having listened to the succinct exposition of what the Commonwealth does, I wondered whether we could go straight to questions. But I really am very grateful to Dr. Huxley for outlining those issues, but also for kindly arranging for me to follow many of the distinguished individuals who have delivered the Fullerton Lectures before. It was here in Singapore in 1971 that the first Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting with the then Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan-yew. Sorry. Do you know, I've had about 3 hours sleep today. So if I seem somewhat distracted, just pretend I'm speaking English. He gave the inaugural and very distinguished chair of the first meeting. And the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is now commonly called CHOGM, as it has become known, was an expansion of the former Commonwealth Prime Ministers' conferences. And it really marked the expansion of the Commonwealth family as new members steadily joined what was becoming an independent and sovereign group of nations during the 1960s and the 1970s. And that first CHOGM led to the Singapore Declaration, which set out the Commonwealth's core beliefs: the rejection of racism and discrimination, liberty, egalitarianism, the eradication of poverty, free trade, institutional cooperation, multilateralism, world peace, and support for the United Nations. True then, true today. And the then Prime Minister regularly attended Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings, and his successors as Prime Ministers have carried forward and continued to build on Singapore's commitment as an active member of the Commonwealth family. And as I have experienced during my time here in Singapore, that commitment has been reiterated by the current Prime Minister during my visit here in Singapore as the fulcrum of what small states can hope to achieve together. And that commitment by Singapore is something to be truly treasured. Now, a year ago this month, at the CHOGM Malta meeting in November, leaders of our member states, then 53, entrusted me with the responsibility of being the next Secretary-General of the Commonwealth. And I took up my duties now about 7 months ago, beginning in April. And it was also this month, a year ago, that world leaders agreed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, 17 goals, to achieve 3 quite extraordinary things in the next 15 years. We were to end extreme poverty, fight inequality and injustice, and fix climate change. Now, these goals match the ambitions of our Commonwealth Charter, which was signed by the Commonwealth family in 2013, and our 52 member countries collectively are all committed to working on them together in a spirit of goodwill and mutual support. And the Commonwealth is often characterized as a family of nations. Its range of networks are quite extraordinary. And it is, in many ways, a network of networks. Its distinctive feature as a family of nations is the range of organizations that link and serve our people. And these bring depth and strength to the worldwide connections of the citizens in our member states. And the unusual thing about our inclusive Commonwealth, and that's the theme for this year, An Inclusive Commonwealth 2016, is the breadth and nature of the countries within it. We have the smallest country, Nauru, less than 10,000 people. The largest country, India, 1.2, 1.3 billion people. We amount to about 1/3 of the world's population, 60% of whom are below the age of 30. And if you look within R52, we have every iteration you could possibly want. Every culture, every language, every form of landmass. We've got islands, tiny ones, big ones, landlocked, countries the size of continents, medium-sized countries, all of them within the same family. And that is something that you find nowhere else. And the immense good that is achieved through cooperation between governments in ministerial meetings, the official dialogue, is immensely enhanced by the vigour and the dedication of Commonwealth civil society organisations, professional bodies and groups serving various communities of interest. Very similar, if you look around the audience today, that we have here. And we in the Commonwealth reflect the faces of the other 2/3 of the world. They can all see themselves reflected in our family. And this really does enable us, as what I call a goodwill of nations, to build peace and stability, and through sustainable development in each of our member states, to lay truly solid foundations for inclusive prosperity in which we can all share. So the sense of affinity and kinship, such as that engendered organically through the many levels of Commonwealth connection, I think should be nourished and cherished and valued. In this regard, the work and contribution of the Royal Commonwealth Society and the Royal Commonwealth Society of Singapore are greatly valued as a pan-Commonwealth body bringing together national associations in member states that are in turn composed of local branches. The Royal Commonwealth Society is itself a network of networks. And two years ago, when President Tan made the first state visit to the United Kingdom by a president of Singapore, at the state banquet in his honour at Buckingham Palace, Her Majesty the Queen announced the Royal Commonwealth Society of Singapore would be reformed. Now, its purpose, in addition to promoting understanding of the Commonwealth and our shared values, is to foster and manage new Commonwealth scholarships and fellowships and innovation for Singaporeans, but involving people from all walks of life and from all member states, and providing opportunities for them to work together in shaping a safer, more equitable world with inclusive economic growth and development in which all can share, is critical to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the measuring up to our shared Commonwealth values and principles. And a good example of how this happens, I think, can be seen in the way the Commonwealth developed its doctrine of the separation of powers, generally better known as the Latimer House principles. So these were originally proposed by a small, informal ginger group of experts within the Commonwealth professional organisations, and their ideas were taken up and developed more widely, including with the Commonwealth Secretariat. And the ministerial buy-in led to the adoption by the Commonwealth heads of government in due course of those principles. So this, I think, really shows how the Commonwealth connection and convening power at multiple levels and the goodwill and ease with which we can interact can lead to something which can have a truly global impact. Globally, regionally, and nationally, we see political, social, and economic change occurring at a very rapid pace. So by offering support to strengthen and stabilize national institutions, and by providing targeted practical assistance to help all our member states to reach the objectives they set themselves, the Commonwealth can be a steadying anchor in these rather turbulent times. Our sustained work together as a Commonwealth provides the basis for major global agreements, as we saw in September and December of last year, when the consensus achieved by our heads of government was taken up and had wider international community acclaim. So in plotting the direction of travel for the Commonwealth, our leaders provide a template for the Sustainable Development Goals, and for Commonwealth leaders' statement on climate change was the precursor for the COP21 Paris Agreement. In November, we decided enforceability, 2 degrees and a 1.5 aspirational target, and then in Paris, globally, we achieved it. But I think the Commonwealth, having, as it did, an opportunity to collect everyone's view, was a good pathfinder for the direction of travel we needed to go in. So immediately before travelling here to be with you, I spent 2 days in a workshop at Marlborough House, our Commonwealth headquarters in London, looking at the possibilities and the potential for regenerative development to reverse climate change. Now, the Commonwealth has long been a pioneer of innovative thinking and conjoined action on the existential threat posed to many of our communities, and in some cases, entire member states, by the destructive human impact on the delicate balance of life on this planet. We first started talking about climate change in the Commonwealth way back in 1989 at the Langley Conference, and we've been beating that drum ever since. So new approaches made possible by science, technology, and changed attitudes now offer the possibility of reversal of that damage. And I find it really exciting that we, as a Commonwealth, can offer leadership in showing how, by adopting and implementing some of these new technologies, we can use them to create a healthier, wealthier, and greater well-being, not only for our people, but also our planet. And some of the technologies that we were sharing together at that conference were truly inspirational. There was a synthesis between some of the new regenerative scientific developments. We were looking at biomimicry. We were looking at symbiotic economies. How can we make economies more circular so that we work out and reduce the level of waste? And I just want to tell you about 2 new developments that some of you may or may not heard of. We were talking with Janine Benyons, who is one of the preeminent thinkers in terms of biomimicry, as to the use to which we can put the new concrete which can absorb carbon, so that we can build buildings which in effect become carbon sinks. The opportunity to introduce cooling mechanisms within our building which emulate termite mounds, which makes it more cost efficient, cost effective, aligning our turbines along roads so that they emulate fish schools and enhance the value and the speed with which we can get that energy. All of that by watching and working with nature as opposed to against it. So we know it was human genius who got us into this trouble on climate change. And I'm confident that human genius will get us out of it. But it does mean working together across the piece, across the disciplines, in a way that's new. And I hope that we in the Commonwealth, through our partnership model, which has been long-standing, will be able to offer some of this innovative thinking as another pioneering Commonwealth contribution when COP22 convenes in Marrakesh next week. Another long-standing and distinctive Commonwealth focus is on economic empowerment and positive engagement of young people, especially those facing complex and multiple disadvantages. Such empowerment and engagement are critical to the well-being of our young people as individuals and their ability to contribute to democracy and to the economic and social development of societies and the countries in which they live. The more skilled our young people are, the more they are involved in planning and working for the future of our societies at every level, the more new opportunities and freedom they will have to fulfill their aspirations and talents. And when you appreciate that 60% are under the age of 30, I think those of us who are slightly over the age of 30 need to just acknowledge where the power balance shift has now gone. And so it's in our interests, if we want to have our pensions, that we really look after them. So the skill, the passion of our young people is something that we are determined to do something about. And speaking in Cambridge in 1969, Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew said this. He said, as the old generation that knew the Commonwealth countries well passes on, a younger generation must keep up the expertise. And so it is in response to that need and that vision for the Commonwealth and its global value that the Singapore Commonwealth Third Country Training Programme continues to offer technical training to officials from around the Commonwealth, covering public administration, governance, disaster management, information technology, productivity management, trade facilitation and SME development. And to date, more than 3,000 Commonwealth citizens have participated in over 170 training programs, cascading lasting benefit to our member states from around the world. And when I was appointed as Secretary General, I said that I wanted to put the wealth back into Commonwealth, but I also wanted to put the common back into wealth. And in saying that, I'm simply articulating the essence of what motivates us as a family and what has for more than 60 years guided us along shared pathways towards good governance, sustainable growth, inclusive social and economic development. So the exchange of ideas as well as trade are the lifeblood of the Commonwealth connection. They bring employment and help to share the social and economic benefits of growth and prosperity more equitably among citizens and communities in all our member states. So as Secretary General of the Commonwealth, I am committed to championing all those who work to liberalise and increase trade in order to drive sustainable and inclusive economic and social development. And the Commonwealth really does offer unrivaled networks through which to expand trade and investment in all our member states. And recent Commonwealth Secretariat research and analysis shows that when both bilateral partners are Commonwealth members, they tend to trade 20% more and generate 10% more foreign direct investment inflows than would otherwise be the case. And this potent Commonwealth effect implies bilateral trade costs between Commonwealth partners an average 19% lower compared with those of other country pairs. Now that is what we see as good business sense to make the most of this unique asset, Commonwealth advantage, which is ours and ours alone for the greater good of all our citizens, but also as a helpful addition to everyone else as well. We derive strength from our shared heritage of the common law, common language, and similar systems of governance. Fraud and corruption potentially destroy the Commonwealth advantage and benefits of having similar institutions. And therefore, I think it's right that we must see how we can use our innate sense of kinship and affinity and the common law to leverage real change in the Commonwealth. We are well placed and have connections and mechanisms that can help us to devise shared approaches to challenges that we jointly face. We have high among my priorities are tackling domestic violence, especially against women and girls, combating the threat of climate change, promoting trade and good governance, championing the health, well-being and human rights of every one of our citizens, and ensuring that all our young people have equitable access to the opportunities they need in order to fulfill their true potential. But we are living through times in which an unprecedented number of women are moving into the highest offices in politics, business, and civil society. And I want to make sure that we take decisive action to draw on that huge pool of female talent now available within the Commonwealth and beyond. So, as our Commonwealth Charter makes clear, justice demands that women have the right to equality in all areas. And this must be embedded within our legal systems, upheld in both law and practice, and realized at every level of economic and political activity. So advancing women's political participation and leadership and economic empowerment are critical building blocks to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And the negative aspects of culture and tradition can be impediments to women achieving protection and justice. And in the Commonwealth, we seek to build in positive ways on what is good in our shared traditions and heritage and on our common aspirations for a safer and fairer future for all, whilst respecting our inherent different traditions, so that we can capitalize on our shared inheritance of the common law, which forms the basis of international law, and on other aspects that combine to give us the Commonwealth advantage. I have announced that we will be setting up a Commonwealth Office of Criminal and Civil Justice Reform, so that we can share templates for legislative reform, implementation of best practice to strengthen public safety, and to help show what has or has not worked in our Commonwealth jurisdiction. And I just want to emphasize what has not worked, because so often we are eager to share our best practice, but less eager to share some of the things where we've failed. And yet we all know that those failures can be the stepping stone for real achievement. So each of our jurisdiction is different and has specific local needs and contexts, yet all share many similarities and deep connection between our people and our institutions that serve them. So partnerships with the judiciary, prosecutors, police, national human rights institutions, international agencies and civil society organizations are all a vital part of this work. So in terms of value for money, benefit to our citizens and improvement of business environment and efficiency, this is a distinctive contribution that I think only Commonwealth can make. Yet, what we achieve in the Commonwealth can be applied more widely. And that's the gift that we can make. That is why in taking corruption together, tackling corruption together conference, we organised at the Commonwealth headquarters in May this year. It attracted such an unprecedented level of participation and interest from right across the world. People were flooding to London, to Marlborough House, to talk about these issues and to find solutions. And it brought together government, business leaders, civil society organisations and the private sector to agree on practical steps that could be taken which will expose and make a real dent in corruption. So leaders spoke unequivocally about their determination to end impunity, to root out corruption, empower victims, and support activists and whistleblowers. And such commitment is vital to the forming of global coalitions of goodwill and good practice to bolster transparency and good governance. So I hope some of these examples of how and why the Commonwealth member states choose to come together voluntarily in a spirit of trust and goodwill and to act together for the common good has served as something of an introduction to our work and our mission. Our Commonwealth's contribution is inspired and implemented by the governments of the 52 member states, and that is where and by whom the impact will be felt and valued. So I hope by coming together, each of us will find fresh opportunities to make the most of what the Commonwealth can offer, both to its citizens and to the wider international community. I think we can, if we choose, make a significant contribution to the world debate on how we develop and deliver a healthier, safer, friendlier Commonwealth. And when I was thinking about what the Commonwealth has in common, other than cricket, I thought actually it was laughter. We share a similar sense of humour. And usually when Commonwealth citizens get together, we never have to say to each other, "I was only joking." Usually we just laugh. Thank you very much.
Secretary-General, thank you very much for your excellent address. I won't try to summarize everything that you said, but there are a few points that I'd like to draw out. You talked about the Commonwealth as a network of networks among a very wide range, an extraordinary range of countries. You pointed out that together they represent about a third of the world's population, 52 countries. You spoke about the role of the Commonwealth in fostering sustainable development and robust democracy in its members, and particularly about the ease of interaction, which you stressed in your last point about humour within the Commonwealth. Very importantly, you talked about some specific roles of the Commonwealth in mitigating climate change, promoting gender equality, and dealing with the problem of corruption. You've kindly agreed to take some questions from the audience, and I know that there will be many among our guests who would like to put questions to you, but if I may, I'd like to start the discussion. And my question is this: we've heard a lot over the last 5 or 6 months about Brexit, and I think that raises the question of what is the value of the Commonwealth for the United Kingdom now that the British government is committed to leaving the European Union. Can we expect, do you think, to see the UK, as it were, turbocharging its interest and activity in the Commonwealth?
Well, the first thing I think to say is that the Commonwealth's relationship with the United Kingdom and the United Kingdom's relationship with Europe was never either or, it was and. So if we look at what we were already doing before the United Kingdom decided through the referendum no longer to want to be part of the European experiment, we were already looking at that 19% advantage that I spoke about and trying to drill down and understand how we could enhance trade and interconnectivity. What has happened now that the decision of the British people has been to come out of Europe is that you use the word turbocharge. I think that's the right thing, that we now know that there is an even more enhanced interest and commitment to reach out to all the countries who are part of the Commonwealth to see how they can develop and enhance and strengthen it. But I think it's also very important to recognize that this is not one-way traffic. Brexit is both a challenge and an opportunity, but not just a challenge for the United Kingdom. I think it has to be accepted that Britain coming out of Europe poses a huge challenge for those countries within the Commonwealth who have traditionally used the United Kingdom as a bridge into Europe. So that challenge is real, and there is now an opportunity to look at the benefits that may come from it. And you'll also know that a number of countries in the Commonwealth, through their prime ministers, spoke very boldly to encourage the United Kingdom to stay. So this is quite an interesting moment now. But there is a total acceptance that sovereign nations have absolute power, opportunity to make their own decisions. And now this decision has been made. What does it mean for the rest of the Commonwealth, and how can the Commonwealth best take advantage of it? And so what the Secretariat has been doing is undertaking country-by-country analysis, if countries and the member states want it, to see how we could best take advantage of what may be the opportunities. We have a new relationship. The relationship between the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth countries is now one of equal partners, part of a family wanting to see commonality and comity. So I think there are huge opportunities as we drill down into what that means. And there's certainly lots of commitment, lots of determination from everyone within the Commonwealth, including the United Kingdom, to see how we make that advantage a reality. But there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you very much. There's now an opportunity for our audience to ask questions. If you'd like to ask a question, could you raise your hand? The microphone will come to you, and then could you say who you are and what your affiliation is, and please, if you can, make your question brief and to the point. So, sir, there in the middle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Asad Latif from the Yusuf Ishaq Institute, the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies. Excellency, thank you first of all for a wonderful overview of really what's important to the Commonwealth itself and to its relationship with the rest of the world. My question is actually kind of takes off from the previous question. Brexit, rightly or wrongly, was seen as a sign of dissatisfaction among many British citizens over the course of globalization, which had taken a certain European form in the case of Britain. Now, this is contested, but if this is true, or even if this is not entirely true, as a political leader, are you personally satisfied with not just the pace of globalization, but the direction of globalization? Or do you think that there are certain problems there which have resulted in this quest for deglobalization which is seen in the United States as well? And if so, what would constitute a kind of inclusive globalization in which the Commonwealth could thrive? Thank you.
I think you're right in saying that there was anxiety and a deal of antipathy amongst a number of people about the Europeanization of our law. So if you think about the position in Europe, you have three Commonwealth countries, but 4 common law countries. That's Cyprus, Malta, Ireland era, and the United Kingdom. Of those 4 Commonwealth countries, the United Kingdom was by far the largest and the biggest voice. And so, in terms of the European family, those 4 countries represented the common law family. And the common law family were living amongst 23 civil-based systems, all of which were different. So you have from the difference between the Northern European jurisprudence, the Southern European jurisprudence, and those systems that came out of the Eastern European bloc. That challenge was being struggled with by European jurists for quite some time. How do you get mutual recognition of those 27 systems of law? How do you get mirrored processes? And should you have harmonization between the legal structures? And you'll know that many common law jurists in the United Kingdom have always been, as many other jurists are, very precious about the distinctive nature of the jurisprudential development of the law in the United Kingdom. If you look at the common law systems within the 53, now the 52 countries of the Commonwealth, we share the same jurisprudential route. So most of our judges were trained in the same discipline. Our prosecutors apply similar legal principles. So interoperability between the 52 member states of the Commonwealth, including the 3 who come from different jurisprudential tracks, but are coming together because the common law is the basis of international law. So that synergy derives a comfort, a recognition of principles. And you had the start of a divergence between common law, Commonwealth jurisprudential development and common law jurisprudential development within a European context. And I think that that fed a bit of dissonance. So, for example, when there was pronouncements made by the European Court of Justice about whether prisoners should have the right, should or shouldn't have the right to vote, or things that seem to touch on nation states preserve, and with a very energetic press who like to present things in the most glorious technicolor, which may not quite reflect the subtleties of the jurisprudential difference. That combination, I think, may have contributed to the dissonance that we've seen. But if you look at the common law basis for the globalized position in the Commonwealth, you actually see a greater chance for synergy and comity, because most of the countries of the Commonwealth are still using common law principles which are recognizable by each other. So you can more easily get an interoperable type of framework. So one of the things I'm looking at doing is to see whether we can't create Commonwealth best practice for legislation, Commonwealth best practice for regulation, Commonwealth best practice for contracts, which will enhance our interoperability for trade whilst not doing violence to the basic principles of how all our systems work. So globalization is a reality. I mean, I wish I could say to you, we could all go home, close the door, and globalization would stop. It won't. If all of us, can I just say, how many of us in this room do not have a smartphone? That's globalization. We are now all interconnected. We're trading, we're speaking, we're communicating with each other in a way we have never had the privilege to do before. And the younger generation are doing it even more. So I think there's not a question of, can we turn back globalization? Because the answer is no, we can't. What we have to do now is to use it, deal with it, get the benefits out of it, and create a structure which we can better manage the aberrant consequences of globalization. It's a rather long answer, but...
Thank you very much. Madam?
Hi, I'm Annie. I work in finance. My question is, why is the inclusive Commonwealth the theme for 2016?
I think the theme of inclusive Commonwealth was to highlight the richness of our diversity. One of the wonderful things, and I can celebrate it because I didn't create it, it was the inclusive Commonwealth was the theme that was given last year, and I actually think it's a fantastic theme, because if you look at our Commonwealth, as I was saying earlier, we have every iteration of culture, religion, and framework that you could possibly want. And the fact that we have all that beautiful variation is something that we should celebrate and include, because when we're problem solving, it's so much better to have all elements in a room at the same time. Because sometimes when we're in our hermetically sealed groups, we tend to think that we're the only ones there. And we come up with solutions which are internally consistent, but won't necessarily fit well with other elements. So having everyone there together to say, that's great for you because you've got a population of 169 million, but it doesn't work so well with me for 10,000, and it doesn't work so well with me for 250,000. But if we can come together inclusively and include everyone in that conversation, we come out with solutions that do work for everyone, but only because we've included everyone in the conversation and have had the humility to listen, to understand, to think, and then to say, well, okay, if you can't fit it this way, if we're inclusive, will it work for everyone if we do it this way? And if everyone's included and is able to say yes, we get a much more inclusive world.
We have time for one more question, sir.
Baroness Anthony Yee, thank you very much for gracing this occasion. I would like to ask a question that possibly could get me into some trouble, but my daughter was lurking somewhere there at the back. What do you think about our youth, and what do you think the future holds for our youth? Thank you.
Well, I'm actually incredibly excited about our youth today, because as part of the Commonwealth initiative, we're doing the 3360 and common purpose, bringing youth together from right across the Commonwealth to come and plot and plan and think about how they can create a more creative world than we have given them. We have put to them the urban and the rural question to see how they would address it. And I had the privilege of speaking to a number of our young people, and they were so wonderfully inspirational with the things that they were coming up. And what they told me very clearly is the thing that they loved more than anything about the Commonwealth initiatives that we've taken is it brings people from right the way across the world who speak the same language together, and that all of them came away with a different perspective because they'd had the opportunity to listen to what others had to say. And they gave me some fantastic examples of how their mindsets had changed. And I remember one which really I will remember very clearly. He said he's a mixed heritage. He's lived in a number of different countries here, Hong Kong, Australia, and he said that he had some real challenges about identity and who he was and where he came from. And from this session, he learned two things. One, that he was part of a wider family, and that was the Commonwealth family. Two, he was very similar to many of the others. And three, he now knew where he belonged. And that was an amazing thing to say. And when I looked around at the others in the room, they were all nodding. So we know that bringing our young people together gives inspiration, opportunity, and change. And I have to tell you that having had the privilege of being with these young people in various countries, I've come away really inspired. And sometimes I think the sooner we hand over the baton, maybe the better. There's a lot of great things and great people in our young people. So I'm really confident, really, really confident. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for... Thank you very much for answering those good questions from our audience, Lady Scotland. You gave a very upbeat, very optimistic, and highly forward-looking Fullerton Lecture, and we're very grateful to you for that and for engaging with our audience. I think what you've done today is to contribute really substantially to our understanding of the Commonwealth and what it's trying to do and what it may be able to do in the future. It's clear that the Commonwealth has an extremely important role to play in international affairs, and it looks as if that role may well expand in the future, and hopefully we'll be hearing a lot more about the Commonwealth in the years to come. So we're very grateful to you for delivering this Fullerton Lecture today. I know you've got a busy schedule here in Singapore. I'm sorry we have to bring this session to an end now, but thank you very much again. Thank you.